Welcome to Burn the Ship. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.
Our podcast, the goal is to connect entrepreneurs or professionals that can help you go all in on your business, right? People that have walked the walk, talked the talk, learned lots of things through going through that experience that you have as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. So, again, thank you for coming. Anybody that makes the commute, it makes a big difference to us, and it means a lot. So, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do in your business.
Wow. That's an hour-long podcast right there. My name is David Wiener. I was given the nickname a number of years ago by one of my large clients here in Atlanta as Mr. Cashflow.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what I do. I have been a consultant since 1989. I ran a large medical practice from 1980 to 1989, left there to go into medical and dental consulting, and did that off and on since then. But about 10, 12 years ago, I began to realize that my clients were coming to me saying, you know what, I'm working as hard as I can possibly work. I'm just not making any money anymore. What do I do? And I started to dig around in that to see exactly where the problem was. And I realized the problem wasn't revenue. These are doctors and dentists, most of them. They were making plenty of money. They just didn't have any money. And their problem was cash flow. And they didn't have a handle on it at all. They didn't even really know what it was. And so I began to focus my consulting around cash flow. And I would go in and talk to a doctor and I'd say, okay, look, you just bought a building. You can get great tax breaks on that. Talk to so-and-so here. They can help you with a cost segregation study. And, you have a collections problem. Here, go talk to this person. They can help you with collections. Or you're paying way too much for your merchant services. Here, go to this guy and you can, whatever. And I don't know if you've ever worked with doctors before.
Oh, yeah.
They're not the best business people in the world. I love them.
They don't change a lot.
Well, they would try to contact these people that I referred them to, and they try maybe once. And if the person didn't get back to them right away, they just give up. And so the next time I met with a doctor, he would say, I said, did you call these people? Yeah, no, I didn't get in touch with them. Well, after a while, that got really frustrating for me because I wasn't able to help them. So I made the decision that I was actually going to be those people. So I took a couple of years and vetted some of the best companies that do collections and cost segregation and some of the other things, and I signed independent contractor agreements with them. That became my company, which is Cash Flow Strategies, and I could be a one-stop shop for all my clients. Well, I also realized doctors and dentists were the only ones that had cash flow problems, and so I expanded my reach, and now I can help small businesses, medium-sized, large businesses, doctors, dentists, professionals, as well as anybody who invests in real estate. And because through the cost segregation, that's become the biggest part of my business over the last few years. My business has absolutely taken off. We have grown, I think we've doubled twice in the last 3 years. And just the work, and I'm a one-man operation,
Yeah.
I'm it.
Yeah.
But it's been fantastic.
Will you get my drink off my desk? I don't want to keep coughing the whole podcast. Appreciate it. So from 1989 to, 2024?
Yeah.
You have how many products that you represent or companies or?
Well, that didn't really start until 10 years ago or so.
Okay. So you were still going through the
I was just
consultative
doing
approach.
standard consulting and, that sort of thing. And I'd help these doctors and dentists streamline their business and that sort of thing. Wasn't really representing any products. That started about 10 years ago when Cash Flow Strategies was born. And I have probably 8 different areas where I now have a direct connection where I can help them. They only have to come to me, which is a good thing for them because they do talk to me.
Sure.
And they can get a hold of me. So they can come to me, and I work in about 8 different areas, from HIPAA compliance to merchant services to cost segregation to collections.
Sure.
The cost segregation and collections and HIPAA compliance have probably been the biggest part. For a very long time, the collections was by far the biggest.
Sure.
And now it's the cost segregation because it's so applicable now.
Sure. So tell me, from a product's perspective, what is the most difficult part or the downside of trying to be an expert in 8 or 10 fields?
Well, you know,
What I'm getting at really is not everyone can take that same approach.
right.
You know what I mean?
Really the hardest thing for me was me. My consulting practice grew organically. It was through referrals and things. I never had to really go out and stump for business and prospect. When I got involved with the first product, which was the collection agency, I was prospecting, which is difficult if you've never done it.
It is.
It's mental.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to get yourself geared up for that. Some people just can't get themselves to do it. I really was excited about what I was offering these guys, so you know, it was a little easier for me. My biggest problem was analysis paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt like I had to know everything about it before I went out and talked to anybody about it. And that was hard for me. Fortunately, the guy who was training me was really good. I mean, he was an expert at the field, but he was also really good at training people. And he helped me out a ton, and he got me to understand that it's okay to tell somebody, I don't know, but I'll find out for you. And that people really, they like that because you're being open and honest with them, and you're not, you know, egotistical kind of,
sure.
I think you know it all.
For sure.
And so, you know, I just had to get out there and start doing it. When I was just doing the consulting, I always had another job.
For sure.
And so I always had an income in case the consulting slowed down and that sort of thing. When I started with that, cash flow strategies and stuff, that was it. And so going totally as an independent contractor was really scary. You know, now I'm not working for anybody else. I'm just working for myself. And if I don't make it, I don't make it, you know. And it was scary at first. And that, I think, keeps a lot of people from doing it.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that within a few months, I said, you know what? I will never work for somebody else again. I love the freedom of being my own boss. You know, if I want to take a day off, I ask the boss, and the boss is me. And I'm usually pretty lenient with myself. Yeah. So not a big deal, you know. And it just sort of, if you put the time in and you put the effort in, the mental part comes along.
For sure.
I consider myself to be an expert on collections and an expert on cost segregation. Some of the other stuff, not quite so much, but that's all right because I know people who do. Mm-hmm. I learned from my dad. My dad was a CPA. He worked for himself since I was very little, like 5 years old. He worked for himself. And he just kept at it and kept at it, kept at it, and it always seemed to work. And he was constantly coming up with ideas and new things. And so it worked for me as well. I got over the shyness. I got over the hesitancy to go out and knock on doors and meet strangers and tell them what I do. And the guys that I'm mentoring now in the business, it's the same thing. They have trouble getting out there and saying what they need to say to strangers. Sure. And I just basically teach them, talk to everybody. Tell everybody what you do because you don't know who you're talking to. And they just kind of get used to doing that, and then they run into business. Yeah. You know, they run into business.
Where do you get most of your business from? Existing relationships, I'm assuming. Right
now, well, I cultivate referral partners. That's probably the biggest part of my work. So few people know about cost segregation that I'm constantly teaching. And so I speak all over the country on cost segregation to all kinds of different groups. I taught for the Georgia Society of CPAs because not all CPAs are very well versed in cost segregation. So real estate CPAs.
Same for merchant services. Honestly.
Exactly, yeah. And so when I have somebody and I do a cost segregation study for them, and I will always say, hey, as a real estate investor or as a real estate broker, I'm sure you know other people who invest in real estate. And they all say, oh, yeah, of course. I've got this group. Well, then I'm going to ask them, can I come speak to your group? Or would you be interested in becoming a referral partner and I will pay you a percentage? I have referral partners all over the country now that are regularly introducing investors to me. The collections, fortunately, I have as my clients some of the largest medical practices in Atlanta, and people are constantly asking them how they do it, and they're telling them, and then these people are calling me. I had a person who worked for one of my client doctors. The doctor actually wound up moving out of state probably 4 or 5 years ago. She called me yesterday. She's at a new practice here in Atlanta, and they want to get started.
Sure.
That doesn't take any sales. That just that's servicing my customers.
For sure.
And I believe too very strongly in taking exceptional care of my clients. And when I sign somebody up as a referral partner, I always tell them, especially if it's like a CPA, because they're putting their neck on the line when they suggest somebody talk to me.
Oh yeah.
So I always assure them when we start, I will always treat your clients at least as well as you do. Most of the time, I'll probably treat them better.
Yeah.
And they like that because they don't have to worry about putting their neck out. I love to speak on podcasts. I do it all the time. I do a lot of videos through Instagram and YouTube and that sort of thing. But I contacted a guy big in real estate, probably one of America's next billionaires, Ryan Pineda, because he had a podcast in Las Vegas. And I said, hey, I'd love to be a guest on your podcast. And he said, well, my podcast is mostly real estate flippers, and they're not really a good candidate for cost segregation. But I just partnered with a CPA to form a real estate investors CPA group. And so I'll introduce you to my partner, Matt. So he introduced me to Matt Bontrager. Matt is the head guy at TrueBooks CPA in Las Vegas. They are growing incredibly fast. And he said, we met and we talked, and he said, I like what you do. I like your whole way of doing things. We're going to refer all of our clients to you. And they do. And that's become by far my largest cost segregation referral partner. Some other CPAs around the country. I just got back from Sacramento, California. One of the guys I did a study for said, hey, I've got a real estate investors mastermind group. Would you be interested in coming up and speaking to them? Yep, tell me when.
Yeah.
And so I flew up to Sacramento and we met with them. It was great. It was an evening at a brewery, about 50 real estate investors. And I love when I teach on it because I get a lot of blank stares from people like, why didn't I know about this? And so many of them have contacted me since. We're working on some studies for some of them, and others, say next time I buy some property.
So let's dive into the cost segregation a little bit, because I think that's probably the thing that, like, if there are people now that own property, they need to know about it. There's a ton of people that don't know anything about it, and probably not going to hear about it from your CPA, depending on who your CPA is. So tell us a little bit about exactly what cost segregation is and the role that your company and yourself plays in that.
This would apply to anyone who owns commercial, industrial, or rental residential property. It has to be income generating property for you to be able to do it, because you don't depreciate your personal residence. What we do in a cost segregation study is we actually accelerate their depreciation. So you buy a commercial building. Typically, the way that it works is your CPA will take the value of that building, or the price of that building, minus the value of the land, divide it by 39 years, and that would be your depreciation deduction every year. By doing a cost segregation study, we come in, they hire us to come in, we identify all the parts of that building that can be depreciated over 5, 7, or 15 years.
Which is what? Furniture,
it is
flooring,
everything that is not structural.
Yeah.
So your furniture is 7-year property, furnishings, and a lot of times the CPAs just like to expense that.
Yeah, but your 1 year stuff
cabinets,
is like
countertops, any specialty electric or plumbing, wall coverings, window treatments, all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot. Anything that's not structural. So, your elevator in the building and other things. And then 15-year property is any land improvements that you do. So we identify all of that stuff. We recreate the depreciation schedules for you, for your tax professional, which accelerates your depreciation. Because if you depreciate something over 5 years, instead of 39 years, you get a much bigger tax deduction.
Right.
Then in 2017, we got the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Part of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was what they call 100% bonus depreciation. It was done to incentivize people to invest in real estate, thinking that would spur the economy on, and it absolutely did. So what that means, 100% bonus depreciation doesn't mean you get any extra depreciation, but all of that 5, 7, and 15-year property could be depreciated 100% the first year.
Yeah.
So crazy tax deductions. Now, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, because of the way they had to pass it in Congress, began to sunset at the end of 2022. So 2023, it was 80%. 2024, it was 60. And it goes to 40, then 20, then 0. But there is a bill that's been passed by the House and it's sent to the Senate called the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act that will reinstate 100% bonus depreciation retroactive to the beginning of 2023 when it started to go down all the way through the end of 2025.
Which means you'll get your extra 20% from 2023 or 40% from 2024. And then
you'll get 100% for any property. This has to do with the date that the property was placed in service. So if the property was placed in service in 23, you get 100% of all the short life property the very first year.
But probably right now what people have is the 80% deduction.
Right now, now it's 60 if they put it into service in 24, but it'll go back up to 100. Fortunately, they think it's going to get passed before people are going to be filing their 23 taxes. So their CPAs can just take the 100% bonus.
Yeah, then there won't have to be retroactive tax deductions for 2 years from now.
Now, the thing people don't realize is, and even a lot of CPAs don't realize is, it doesn't have to be new property.
It's just new to you.
No, it doesn't even have to be new to you. We can actually go back 15 years. If you've owned the property for 15 years or less.
But it just is less the yearly deduction of depreciation, whatever they've credited you for.
Yeah, what we do is we create the cost segregation study, and then we also have to file, your CPA has to file what they call a Form 3115, which is a change of accounting methods form that tells the IRS we were doing straight line, we're now going to accelerated depreciation. Mm-hmm. But there is an adjustment made so that it's just like you took bonus depreciation and accelerated depreciation from the very beginning.
Right.
So any property that somebody's owned for 15 years or less that has a cost basis of $150,000 or more is a pretty good candidate. Mm-hmm. And if we're not sure it's a good candidate, I can run a free estimate on any piece of property for anybody.
Yeah.
No cost. Takes me a couple of days to get it done. And that shows you exactly what it costs and then what the estimated tax benefit would be. And usually that's when I get the deer in the headlights look when I tell somebody, yeah, here's what your tax benefit will be, and they say, really? I try and have us shoot just about 10% low on the estimate so that when the study's done, I get to call them and say, hey, we told you we were going to get you.
Better than I thought.
Yeah, it's much better.
So is it, you can do this for real estate that corporations are actively working in?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
So large office buildings,
absolutely.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Most of your big commercial companies are aware of cost segregation.
Sure.
It used to be,
even companies like mine, like even office buildings with suites in them, things like that.
Not only can we do that, but we can also cost segregate leasehold improvements. Let's say
really?
You're not the owner, but you did the build out. I have a bunch of those with like dental offices where
they have to do serious renovations to make it look good.
Then we can do a cost segregation on the build out. We can do one on the building for the owner.
Yeah, you should talk to the owner of my company. We own this building, but
I've done a lot of like shopping plazas
Sure.
where we do the building for the for the owner of the plaza, and then we do the build outs for all the individual tenants because they paid for their own.
Right.
I did one for a Dunkin' Donuts where one company built the building, and Dunkin' Donuts leased, the owner of the Dunkin' Donuts leased the building from them, but did the entire build out on the inside. I did a study for each one of them.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you know, when you first start in a building or whatever, that's when you need the extra cash.
Sure.
And so there's also a thing, getting back to my consulting with doctors and dentists. Had a doctor in town here who bought a standalone Wells Fargo branch to put his practice in. Only dentist office I've ever seen that has its own ATM out back. And the guy was a friend, and I said, hold on. So you own the practice, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, and you're buying the building? He said, well, I put it in an LLC. And I said, so do you own the LLC? And he said, yeah, it's the same ownership between the practice and the LLC. I said, well, you know, you could do a cost segregation study on it, and you can use the depreciation against your practice income.
Yeah.
Even though it's in a separate corporation. And he said, really? So he got all excited. About a week later, I got a call from his tax attorney who's screaming at me, why did you tell him he could do that? And I said, because he can.
Yeah.
And he said, no, you can't. He has to only use it against the rent he's paying himself in the LLC. And I said, no, there's something in the tax code called grouping of entities. It has to have a common ownership and a common purpose, but then you can group them together for taxes. He said, you can't do that. So we talked for a while, and I finally said, I'll send you all the IRS documentation on it. I sent it to him. He still didn't believe me. So I got the VP of operations at CSSI, the company that I work with, to call him. He's got a master's in taxation. Mm-hmm. He called him, and it took him about a half an hour to convince the guy. But all in all, he finally said, I guess you can. We saved the guy $200,000.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, it's just really insane that people don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you know, CPAs, my dad taught me too that to be a CPA in today's world, you've got to be about 10 miles wide and a foot deep.
Yeah.
You know, you got to know a little bit about a ton of different things. And he said that's why you always have people who are a foot wide and 10 miles deep on different topics that you can go to. So that's where I fit in. And I go to a lot of CPAs. I teach them CPE courses on it and then say, look, I just want a seat at the table. If you have any questions about cost segregation, bonus depreciation, any of that stuff, call me. I won't charge you anything. I like to, help you out. And so I have a lot of people who will call me and say, okay, I got this piece of property. What do I do here? And I always tell all my clients, before you renovate your property, buy another property, or sell this property, call me and I'll show you the best way to do it for taxes.
Yeah.
And they do. And so I keep that relationship going. And
well, hopefully we can inspire some of these people. Like, there are people kicking around the idea of starting a business that are watching this podcast right now that feel they need retail space. And whether that's leased and renovated or owned and renovated or whatever that is, there are huge tax benefits early on in your entrepreneurial journey. Even if you don't make money your first year, you don't have any income to deduct from. It's like you have another year where you're going to make money and you can offset taxes for a long period of time.
Well, that's the nice thing too about this. If a cost segregation study causes you to have a loss on paper, you can carry it forward until you use it all.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal.
Yeah, and I would imagine that some of these startup companies, it makes a difference for 2 years, 3 years.
Early on is when you need that cash.
Yeah, for sure.
And I always tell people, it isn't really about what you save today. If you understand the cash value, the time value of money.
It's what you defer later.
Oh, my gosh. $1 today is worth a whole lot more than $1 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put it to work today, it's not going to be just that. It's going to grow. We even always show them a projection. If you put this money to work and it makes 8%, which is fairly conservative,
pretty conservative.
Here's what it's going to be at the end of your 39 years of life of the property.
You're going to retire. Yeah.
And people say, well, I might sell it. Well, most of the people who invest in real estate, when they sell it, they do what they call a 1031 exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So they use the proceeds from that sale to buy another property. If you do a 1031 exchange, there's no depreciation recapture. So that's why I say flippers can't really do it, because as soon as you sell it, there's depreciation recapture, and you're going to wind up paying a lot of it back. I have some that do it because they consider it an interest-free loan from the government for a year or two.
Yeah.
But if you do a 1031, you just keep kicking that can down the road, and then you can cost segregate the new property and go from there.
Yeah, and then go right back if you need to make another upgrade. And
Yep.
yeah, that's interesting. It's one of the coolest things that I've heard about in a while, especially. Maybe we'll give you a call in the future as we hear something about this legislation. We'll get on the phone over the next couple of weeks. Maybe we can put something out about it. I'm excited.
I'm posting, excuse me, I'm posting regular updates on my Instagram channel and on social media, just saying, don't file your taxes quite yet.
Yep.
We don't want you to have to amend. Oh, and the nice thing is, if we go back on a property, you don't have to amend your taxes.
Oh, really?
It's all in the current year.
Yeah. Because it's the same numbers. It's just how it's viewed by the
Well,
IRS.
because of that Form 3115, which, by the way, most CPAs hate to do those because it's really a pain to fill out. So we've made the decision, and I think we're probably the only cost segregation company that does it. We've made the decision that we're going to go ahead and we can fill it out for the CPA and send them the draft filled out copy. All they have to do is sign it.
Sure.
So they love that. I've had a few CPAs who we were talking about whether they want to become a referral partner or not. I told them, we do the 3115s for you. And they said, okay, you get them all. That's
sure.
Because they just hate it. It's a pain,
Yeah.
So that's an advantage. And here's an exclusive for you because nobody knows about this yet. Later this month, we will be introducing a new product. We're the only cost segregation company in the country that will be allowed to sell it. It's more for people who build the buildings, but it's a product called Green Zip. It is a replacement for your drywall tape. We've already got a ruling from the IRS. Any interior walls are considered structural, and you can't. It's 39-year property. By using this Green Zip, which is fully removable, you can pull this Green Zip off, unscrew the drywall. You don't have to break the drywall. You can reuse the boards. And according to the IRS now, all interior walls will now be 5-year property rather than 39-year property if it uses Green Zip.
Wow.
And so we're trying to get into a lot of hospitals, hotels, large commercial buildings where they may need to rearrange the walls later. It would save them a ton of money in doing that. Plus,
they would get a huge bonus on their
oh my gosh, when
cost
you do the
segregation.
cost segregation, and we're the only ones that are going to be allowed to sell it.
That is insane.
So yeah, it's coming.
That is insane.
I don't have enough details to get into it a lot, but by the end of this month, it's going to be on the market and ready to go.
Well, I'm looking forward to putting this out so that because I think that we get a lot of different perspective on the podcast. I think we get a lot of different energy, a lot of different mental perspective of different people that have been through different things, been in different industries. There's not a whole lot of like breaking news that goes on the podcast, and this seems like a good one. It's kind of a first for me.
Well, I am 67 years old, and my wife keeps saying, "You're never going to retire, are you?"
Yeah, I'll be honest. You couldn't tell it if you weren't like. You can't tell.
No, and I
love
what I do.
Yeah, you're excited about what you do in a way that's like you can't tell that you're 67. It's like you're excited about it.
How many
Young
people
salesperson,
wake up every morning excited to get into their office
Not
and do
many.
their work?
A very small percentage.
I love doing it. I go into my office every Saturday. My office happens to be in my house, but I go into my office on Saturdays and Sundays too, just to see if anything's happening.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming, my friend. I will tell people at least at the very least how to find you and get in touch with you if this is something that they're interested in.
There are a lot of ways to get in touch with me. You can find me on Instagram at david.wiener, and it's Wiener, I before E, except after C.
Yeah.
The best
Follows
way
the
to
rule.
get me is through a call or text, 770-367-8091. and I can give you all the information and a whole bunch of other ways to get in touch with me.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming, my friend. It means a lot. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was
All right.
great.
Burn the ship.